Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bella Dinzar, and I'm Vice Chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board. We are here to investigate yesterday's accident involving a Hawker 125-700A aircraft that crashed into a 4-unit apartment building here in Akron, Ohio. Before I go any further, on behalf of the entire NTSB, I'd like to offer our sincerest condolences to the family and friends of the victims of this tragic accident. Our thoughts are with them during this difficult time. We'd also like to extend our thanks to the local authorities and first responders for all of the assistance they provided to the community and to us. The NTSB is an independent federal agency charged by Congress with investigating every civil aviation accident in the United States and significant accidents in marine, rail, pipeline, and marine. We also issue safety recommendations intended to prevent further such accidents. Our first investigator from Chicago arrived on scene last night. Additional investigators from our headquarters in Washington, D.C. arrived at about 10 a.m. this morning. We began the on-scene of our investigation. The investigator in charge of this accident is with me here today, Mr. Jim Silliman. Mr. Silliman has over 20 years of experience as an aviation accident investigator at the NTSB, and he leads a multidisciplinary team of experts. Some of the areas that the NTSB will be examining during this investigation are flight controls, engines, records, weather, air traffic control, and operations. In addition to our investigators, we have a specialist from our Office of Transportation Disaster Assistance. He is working here on scene and coordinating with families, with local and state authorities, with volunteer organizations, and with the companies involved in this accident to provide assistance to all of those who've been affected by this tragedy. Since arriving, our investigators have been briefed by local authorities. Mr. Silliman has established our groups, our parties to the investigation. The parties to the investigation are the Federal Aviation Administration, Honeywell, which is the engine manufacturer, and Textron, the holder of the aircraft type certificate. They will provide technical expertise to our investigation. Here is the factual information that we have right now. The charter jet carrying 2 crew members and 7 passengers departed Fort Lauderdale at about 6:30 a.m. on Monday for a flight to Minneapolis, Minnesota. After a few hours in Minneapolis, they flew to Moline, Illinois, and then on to St. Louis, Missouri, before flying to Cincinnati, Ohio, arriving at approximately 7:40 p.m. Both crew members and all 7 passengers stayed overnight in Cincinnati and departed Cincinnati at 10 a.m. for Dayton. They departed Dayton for Akron late yesterday afternoon. The accident occurred just before 3 p.m. while the plane was on approach to Akron. Our investigator in charge, Mr. Silliman, has interviewed the pilot who approached and landed at the airport just prior to the failed approach by the accident aircraft. We may be interviewing this witness further during the course of our investigation. We have also reviewed a security camera video that shows the aircraft seconds before it crashed. The video shows that the aircraft was flying at a low altitude and banking to the left. We have also examined the accident scene. The left wing hit the ground first and left a witness mark. Then the aircraft hit half of an apartment building, destroying it before running up an embankment behind the building and coming to rest. We have recovered the cockpit voice recorder, and it is en route to our laboratory in Washington, D.C. on the same FAA airplane that brought part of our team here today. Again, we're in the very early stages of our investigation. Tomorrow will be our team's first full day on scene. We hope to begin the recovery of the aircraft itself tomorrow. We will be examining the cable continuity for the flight controls, and we will prepare the engines for shipment to Honeywell. We will also start gathering information on the flight crew, including experience and training, as well as gathering information on the aircraft itself, including maintenance records. Our investigative team will be on scene for approximately 4 to 5 days. Our mission is to understand not just what happened, but why it happened, and to prevent accidents like this from happening again. While on scene, we will not be determining the probable cause of the accident, nor will we ever speculate about what may have caused the accident. Since we are just beginning our investigation, we don't have a great deal of information to report now. However, we will keep you informed by providing regular updates as we learn more. And for the latest information on media briefings, I encourage you to follow us on Twitter and on our website. You can find us on Twitter at NTSB, and our website is ntsb.gov. Those who may have information that might be relevant to our investigation may also contact us by email, eyewitnessreport@ntsb.gov, and that is spelled EYE, witnessreport@ntsb.gov. Thank you, and I'd be happy to take some questions.
Vice Chairman,
please raise your hand, and I will call on you, and please announce the media source you represent. Yes, sir.
Vice Chairman John Yang from NBC News. 2 questions. Can you tell us what the conditions were the pilot reported that landed just prior to this? And also, was this aircraft's first approach, or had it already gone around after a first approach?
So the question is, was this the aircraft's first approach, and what were the conditions of that approach? And those are some of the issues that we're looking at. As far as we know, the pilot, this was the first approach, but we'll be looking into all of the records that show and all of the communications that show this. We'll also be looking at weather, and weather, in fact, is one of the key areas that we'll be looking at very carefully in this accident. Yes. This aircraft was on, the question is, were they on instruments? And yes, or VFR. And this aircraft was on, yes, was an instrumented flight.
What were the conditions at the time, to your knowledge?
So the question is, what were the conditions at the time? And there was a previous flight that landed just before this flight landed, and there were conditions that were instrumented conditions that were capable of being landed, but those are all areas that we're looking at very carefully, because we want to make sure that we understand all aspects of the weather and the conditions and the ground conditions affiliated with this. Yes.
There were reports that perhaps the plane's wing may have put some power lines that could have been involved. Just wondering if you have any ideas that may have been a factor.
So the question is, did the airplane's wings clip some power lines, and was that a factor? So we do have evidence that the power lines were clipped. The left wing, in fact, hit the ground and left marks. We call them witness marks, but we'll be looking into all the factors to see what may have contributed to this. Yes.
The pilot that landed before, how soon before did he land, and what did he say or she say about that flight?
So the question is about the pilot who landed before the accident aircraft, for the aircraft that got into an accident. And we did interview, Mr. Silliman did interview this pilot, but this is an ongoing investigation. We may interview him again. So all of that information, when we have our public docket, the interviews will be made public, but we are not releasing all of that information just yet.
Do you know at this point, was there a distress
Yes.
call?
You mentioned the left wing struck the ground first, and that the video showed that it had banked to the left. What can you draw from that? What does that mean? What indications does that give you about what plane distress?
So the question is, what does the fact that the left wing hit the ground first have? What kind of indications? There are many things that could have resulted in this. We are not speculating. We are going to look at all of the aspects of this. Would you like to add anything related to that?
No, that's actually a good answer.
So we, while we're on an ongoing investigation, we will let you know information as we're free to release it. Yes.
Is there anything you can tell us about this particular aircraft? history, anything like that?
So the question is about the aircraft itself. As we said, this aircraft was a charter flight. It has 2 turbine engines built by Honeywell, which will be looked at. But as far as all of the other aspects, we will be looking at every aspect of the aircraft, from its maintenance records, when it was built, any modifications that were made to the types, to how many passengers it could hold.
Actually, not just this aircraft. I'm sorry. I should have been more specific. I meant that particular model of aircraft, not just specifically in this case.
So the question is about this specific model of type of aircraft, and we'll be looking at that. So, yes.
Hi, Associated Press. Can you tell us anything about communications with the tower at Akron Fulton on this approach? Was there any indication that the pilot and the aircraft is having some sort of trouble or distress?
Can we release that now?
I can take it.
Yeah. I'll let Mr. Silliman take this question.
The airport at Akron Fulton, it does not have a control tower, so they are actually on approach, being controlled by Akron International, and they were given radar vectors to the localizer 2-5 approach. There was no communications with the towers, since there was none. However, they are making reports on the Unicom here, and the airplane that landed beforehand was on that same frequency. They stated that they did not hear any distress calls or anything of that nature.
We'll take
So
two more
for,
questions.
so for those of you who might not have heard the question, it's was there any communication with the tower? And Mr. Silliman said that there is no air traffic control tower here, but in this case, we did interview the pilot who landed the aircraft prior to the accident aircraft, and he did relay information about communication.
And heard nothing, correct?
And there was no sign of distress at that time. Yes.
Tim Rudell for National Public Radio. In the series of flights starting with Minneapolis before the plane Wednesday, were there any reports of any issues or difficulties with the plane at any of those takeoffs?
So the question is, were there any difficulties in the previous takeoffs or landings? We are looking into all of those different takeoffs and landings. We're looking at the entire flight plan, which was reported by this pilot and the crew, and we'll let you know. Last question.
Denise Sorello with Cleveland 19, was a local CBS affiliate. Did the pilot that was interviewed previous to this unfortunate crash, that had flown the airplane beforehand, did he report any problems with the plane at all?
So I believe the question is, was there any problems with the pilot who flew the airplane before him? We have not spoken to that pilot. We spoke to the pilot who flew an aircraft that landed before this aircraft landed. And that's how we were able to get information about some communications and the conditions. Thank you very much.